Welcome to the Last American Vagabond. Joining me today is Greg Reese of the Reese Report, here to discuss everything going on in the world. We have yet to connect for an interview, long overdue. So I decided to invite him to discuss just his views on a lot of the different things. If you're not familiar with his work, you're going for a surprise. He's an amazing researcher, really insightful, and does a lot of, like mini documentaries. I'll let him describe what he would call the kind of short reports, but on some topics that few people cover that are reaching a lot of people. And I think he's doing great work today. So Greg, it's good to have you on the show, brother. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. I was actually just watching one about the radiant energy discussion, and it's a really, an interesting topic that really, actually really, I think something that is probably supported by a lot of people in this field, but weirdly doesn't get as much attention as it should. What would you call, like you consider that, just, I guess your reports, your daily reports, but it's usually like 6 minutes or so. It feels like a mini documentary style. Like, is that how you look at it?
Yeah, I try to do, like quick summaries basically, and that's why I like to show, like, if I can't show links and stuff, then I can't make the video, because the way I see it is, if it's a subject that someone else is interested in, then they can dig deeper, after watching a 5-minute summary. So
I love it. Yeah, I think it's a good starting point, whet their appetite. Well, for those that aren't familiar with your work, introduce yourself, how you got into the field, and what you're currently doing.
Well, I can really consider myself more of an artist than anything else. Like, music and making videos and music is something I fell in love with as a toddler, and just been doing it for joy. I've never really made, I wouldn't say I've ever really made any money doing it, although I have made some money doing the Reese Report. When the Reese Report came about was because in 2004, I had a profound spiritual experience type thing, where led me to believe that there was going to be a big awakening, and there was going to be an opportunity where we could, elevate ourselves to a better position in this strange realm that we're in.
Yeah.
And so I started working towards it back then, but I kind of gave up around 2012. It seemed like it was hopeless. And then in 2017, 2018, I got back. I started seeing things that made me think, okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity here. And so I got involved. That's why I got involved. And yeah, my small part is just to do my little, like, because, you figure, what am I going to do my small part? I would imagine the answer is the same for everyone. You just do the things that you like to do, and you work it in there. So
yeah, I
like to make music and videos and stuff. And so I'm just working it in there to try to, contribute in some way.
Yeah, well, fantastic. I mean, it's, like kind of what you're saying is, we all have our, whether it's about what you love to do or just what you're good at, we have in each of our special ways to contribute to what we think we're trying to accomplish, or just, achieving our goals or changing the world. And so it's, you use those where you can. And I think you add a very interesting element to all of this. I really do appreciate the reports you put together. The one, for example, the police state for your safety. I included it in a kind of a important show I did called The Technocratic Tiptoe, and really was just like a good middle part to kind of tie a bunch of this stuff together. And I think that's what a lot of them do, is really kind of connect parts, not just like, here's a thing and why it's important, and here, but like why it fits in to the story today, and why, contextualizing for people, which as it seems like it should be simple, but it's probably one of the most difficult parts, I would argue, to not only accept people to, get past their political blockings, but to make it make sense for people. So you do a good job on that, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So let's start with well, actually, before I get into some things that I want to talk about, that I think are just, I want your thoughts on what's going on in the world right now. You're paying attention to this, like we all are. You're watching the development tape. I'm not sure if you're into the 24-hour, watching every day or not, but right now in your mind, what's something that's, not necessarily like the most important story in the world, but to you, what's something right now that's on the top of your mind? What do you think is an important story you'd like to discuss that you think is important?
Well, I think right now there's only really one story, I think, which is closing us into this digital system, the digital ID, the digital money. These used to be, like I mentioned, 2004. Back in 2004, when I first started researching all this stuff, that was really the main concern. There were several movies made about it. The main concern was, we're heading towards a police state, a digital police state, cashless society. It was pretty clear. And then over the past 10 years, they've created all this other drama, like the, transsexual stuff, and all that stuff, the pedophilia, really offensive, shocking stuff that I think was designed to get not everyone's attention, specifically people that try to ignore politics, which is really a good idea. Honestly, I've done it most of my life. It's not a bad thing, but they wanted to get all of their attention so that they could get them part of this new awakening. And now all they got to do is get rid of that stuff for the past 10 years. But we are going into a cashless society for sure. The only thing that would have ever stopped it, in my opinion, is a massive awakening where we stand up. We don't just sit home and watch other people try to stand up. We all, come together, unify, which seems to have been the biggest challenge for a lot of people, is the unity part. But without that, and that doesn't seem like it's happening, and I'm not being a Debbie Downer, I'm just being realistic. Living through COVID kind of made me realize I was a bit naive, I think, to maybe think it was going to happen. But short of that, we are heading into it. So that's really the only story. And so if you're not going to, and I'm not saying that to be like fearful, I'm saying it to prepare, And if like the first and foremost thing that should be on everyone's mind is where you live. Are you content with where you're living right now? Because some places, the president of the United States basically announced who has to look forward to this hell in the near future. And that would be after DC, he said, New York and Chicago and maybe Baltimore, so those are on the radar. I would clear out of there if I were you. And if you're in a good place, because I do think there are some decent places to be, all things considered, then you got to start thinking about how you're going to prepare for it. If there's not going to be this massive Bob Marley song awakening, then what are you going to do? That's one of the reasons I put that Bedini wheel video out, is because I built one of those back in 2010, and they're good for learning the science, so you can actually do it yourself and understand what's going on. There's probably better ways of powering your home, but there are ways of powering your home. And if you're waiting to buy it in a store, you're never going to find it. But we're living in a time right now where it could be very valuable to get yourself set up for the future.
Yeah, and just in energy independence, and I'll be sure to include that video if people want to check it out, since we've mentioned it. It's interesting, and it really comes down to finding ways. And what I found most interesting is not just to find ways to become independent, energy and otherwise, but that it's so suppressed. That's what always piques my interest, is how obviously so much effort has been taken to not just make the information suppressed, but no one's making it. No one, obviously this would be a valuable venture if you could make it and sell it, right? But clearly there's blocks along the way to stop that from being, because obviously it can't be something, it's the whole Nikola Tesla versus, the current idea of energy we use today, where ultimately one can be monetized, the other can't. There's a lot more to it, right? But that's a huge part of that. Yeah. But you mentioned, so I agree with you. I think it's obviously this whole direction is alarming. It's obvious that's bipartisan. It clearly is beyond partisanship. And so I want to go into more of that as well, including the DC overlap, which I think is interesting, and talk about the Freedom City overlap, Smart City, Prospera stuff. But you made a point about the trans, that kind of which is still there, which is not as much as it clearly as oscillated. And I think there's other partisan levels of the same kind of thing going on. But so you mentioned that, so do you feel that was, I guess the way you framed it was almost like they threw all that in your face to be able to tear it down, to rationalize why it looked like change? Is that what you were kind of saying?
I think that's a big part of it. I think we're dealing with entities that are highly sophisticated, highly intelligent. I think they know us better than we know ourselves, by and large. And I think they're highly economical and efficient. And so I don't think they ever do anything for one reason. I think everything has multi dimensions to it. But I definitely, absolutely think that was a big part of it. I remember, in InfoWars, when I worked at InfoWars, there was a lot of pushing out of trannies and images of trannies, hideous images of trannies and stuff. And I really tried to avoid doing it. I didn't know what was going on at the time. I really didn't get it at the time, but it was unsettling. I find it unsettling to share all the child stuff too. A lot of people share it and they think they're helping. They think, well, we're exposing this and stuff. I don't really, I don't see that. I mean, it's like the only way that's another good example. I think the reason they pushed all the pedophilia out, for example, with QAnon, is, and I was confused for a while too. I remember thinking about it. back around 2018, 2019 and being like, well, they are exposing all this, you know. But no, what they're doing is they're freaking everyone out, because the only way you're going to save the children, because most abuse happens in the home, in the family, the only way you're going to save the children is to monitor them 24/7 somehow. So that's
right.
that'll be accepted. That's one of the ways that grandma's going to accept the AI system. No offense, because I know there's some badass grandmas out there, but I'm just saying, you know, the people that are their hearts are bleeding for the children, which is not a bad thing. Obviously, it's not a bad thing.
Right.
But you know, they've created us. These people are clever, or these things are clever, whatever they are. But they've created a scenario to where it's, you know, good luck trying to tell people to do other than these, you know, than to save the kids. You know, what are you gonna like vote? Like when a lot of people are mad at people that were pushing Trump in the last election. And I don't even see it seems like wasted energy and wasted, because it's like, what were you going to do? Were you going to get people to not vote? I mean, that would be awesome. I think it would be great if you could get people to not vote, but you got to choose your battles.
Yeah. What is interesting though is, you know, clearly so like the QAnon point and the pushing of that, you know, clearly, like we both agree, there are things that need to be stopped and uncovered. But it's interesting because clearly, like even today with Epstein and stuff, it's obvious that from all angles, that's not what they're trying to accomplish, you know. And so so the idea is not only to make you feel like this is now being removed, even though it's something they are putting in front of your face, but that ultimately it's about the surveillance around it, which we're obviously seeing, right? I mean, the idea of like okay, UK and the Online Safety Act, the same exact premise, right? The idea that we have to be concerned about the kids online, so we have to watch everything that's happening. I mean, it makes perfect sense, you know. It's probably somewhat of both, you know. So I definitely agree with that. Do you think there's any overlap with the trans part of this and like the transhumanist overlap to that, or like, you know, is that just, you know, connecting dots that aren't there in your mind?
I mean, sure. I think so. I'm still kind of confused about the transhumanist thing, just because like for a while I was shaking my head being like, this is insane and it's stupid. And so they don't really want transhumanism. They don't really want an AI run world. They're just, that's a red herring or something. But now I don't think so. I think I haven't seen, it seems like that's what they really want. I have my theories as to why, but it still does, like, it, you know, in most cases, in most scenarios, it just doesn't make sense. Like why, you know, and why is it so important to have it so quickly on this timeline, you know? But yeah.
Well, my thoughts are just that I think that what's happening, whether because of a byproduct or like like they shot themselves in the foot with their agendas, you know, they basically pushed too hard during COVID and made people like wake up to larger things. I mean, who knows? But that I think it's because people, for whatever reason, are starting to question things they haven't. I think that's self-evident. I think it's happening all over the place. And why is, you know, like I talk about the Yuga cycles in every show, and like the evolution of consciousness, you know, who knows what it is, but people are definitely challenging partisan lines. They're questioning, you know, the Israel and Zionism. It's interesting to see. And I think that this is an effort to drive us to a place to where that's no longer even relevant. You know what I mean? Like to where, like, okay, well, you say the wrong thing. Well, like you're boxed out. Your ID's turned off. Your money doesn't work anymore. You know, it's like there would be so many mechanisms that it's 1984. You know, you're whether or not you even realize the problem, it doesn't matter anymore. That's kind of what I sense from this, you know, and that's why it feels like this control grid is just rapidly coming to fruition.
Yeah, you know, it's funny in 1984, like that book seemed kind of far out up until just the past few years. Like even in the beginning of COVID, it was still kind of far out. Like allegory, you know, that's what it seemed like. It seemed like some type of allegorical narrative, but it's turned out to be quite literal. Like it really seems like that was the blueprint. You know, the smart city, that's what the smart city is. The smart city is the main location of 1984. And then right outside of the city, there was like the wild, wild west out there. And that does seem like where we're going. I don't know what that's all about. It could be societal collapse. Maybe it was known quite some time ago that it was inevitable. I think there's a geological event that's coming. That's the only thing that really ticks off everything and explains everything.
That they're aware of some like potentially like life-ending event, some kind of thing, and that they're trying to.
I don't mean like the end of the world, like that. But like for example, you know, like in Russia, they don't talk about global warming. They don't talk about climate change. What they're saying is they say there's a pole shift that's coming in the near future. They're preparing for it. They're spending billions of dollars in the Arctic. It appears that they're clearing new shipping lanes up there that are going to be the future shipping lanes. This is probably why America wants Greenland, because they want to compete with that, or they want those shipping lanes. They're saying that land is going to thaw in Siberia. They're saying they need more people. They're incentivizing to get people to come there and move. The church in Russia has been prophesizing this for many years, saying this is going to happen. Edgar Casey predicted a pole shift. He said there's going to be an event and the pole star will change to a different pole star. And he drew a map or described a map of how it would look in America. And this goes, I mean, I've been doing research since 2004, and every rabbit hole I go down ends in cataclysm, every single last one, to the point where I thought maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm just seeing this because I don't know, maybe I'm in love with doom or something. So I went through that process to question myself, and I came out being like, no, if anything, I feel like the grace of God has been whispering it to me, saying, get ready, it's coming, something's coming, you know. And I think it aligns with the shift of the ages. Like, we're shifting into the age of Aquarius. These ages are roughly 2,000 years long. They're marked in the Bible symbolically, so they're kind of a big deal. They're calling this the Great Reset, or that's what they were calling it, you know. So in a way, I think and it explains everything. It really does. It explains the transhumanism as best as I can get it. It almost seems like that's part of a last ditch experiment. To see, you know, for, like I said, there's not just one reason. And one of those reasons could be like, well, look, a lot of these people are going to die anyway. So now's our chance to just, you know, do everything that we want to do while they're still alive.
Yeah. But I agree with you on the other point is like, or even the idea of, you know, making yourself eternal in, you know, putting your brain inside the cloud, you know, like these are the ideas of, I mean, it clearly seems like where you're pointing to, and I agree, there's so many markers for this, that there's a level of people in the inner circle that, you know, the powers that shouldn't be, that believe that there is something coming, some kind of an event that, if you look back, like I mentioned, the Yuga cycles again, like that's all these things are kind of highlighting things that you can actually prove, that there are time frames through which you've seen kind of consistent, you know, comets or conflagration or you know, flooding or any number of things that have happened. And usually that's where, like, these stories, you know, where we talk about the floods and Noah and stuff like that. That's where the argument from the scientific side is that's what that's highlighting, is one of these moments of cataclysm. And so if that's the case, let's just say it is the reality, then clearly they're trying to build in a way that would either can maintain their power, but also, as you're saying, maybe the last ditch effort to see if maybe they can circumvent the whole thing, you know, like technologically. But at the same time, even if they're wrong, that they may think this. And that does seem to be that the choices that are being made, like we all felt COVID felt very rushed, right? And whether that was reaction to something or it was using, you know, making it up to, it's driving us in the same direction that every other agenda is right now, you know?
Yeah.
Is that kind of, you know, do you sense that like the AI and all the stuff they're trying to do is, you know, like that, just like a life-saving kind of, you know, like where do you go? Go ahead.
I think more so, like you said, to maintain their power. That's what I think. That's what I really think it is. Because if you look at if you follow astrology, which I would recommend, because it doesn't matter if you believe in astrology or not. Astrology reflects itself on the realm that we live in. It's predictable. And it always has been. And it's a very interesting. It's worth also studying astronomy, which is also sort of the modern day a fraction of what astrology used to be. But astrology used to be what all science was under. And the reason I bring it up is because if you look at the age of Aquarius, which is what we're moving into, it does paint a picture of more control. It paints a picture of technology. In fact, it does reflect everything we're seeing right now, but it also reflects a time of freedom, a time of freedom for the individual,
right?
A time of liberation. And so I think I like the yin yang. I think we live in a realm of light and dark that serves some type of purpose that's beyond me. Mm-hmm. And I think it's always going to be like that here. And I think as much as things are changing, and I think everything's changing, but as much as they change, I don't think there's necessarily going to be any more dark or any more light. We're just going to find them in different places, and you can find them in different ways.
Well, sorry, I was
Just
going
to finish what I was saying, I was just going to finish it by saying, like, I don't think the world's coming to an end. I think for some people it is. I think some areas are going to get hit really hard. That would explain a lot. I think the coastlines in America might get hit pretty bad or something. But once we get through that, we are living in an incredible opportunity to build something new. And there are a lot of people that are pulling their heads out of their asses. And all we got to do is form little communities and enclaves and put our heads together and build things and that's really, I think, the best thing we could do anyways. The idea of wanting your government to do it for you is kind of lame. It's kind of like putting yourself in a position of being a slave or a pet, you know?
Yeah, and it's in fact counter to what we believe this country represents in the first place. You know what I mean? It's like we're completely spun out with all this right now. It's like the rationale is always to like go back to something that like you could arguably people have argued we never even truly had to begin with. You know, it's like this. I think we're lost in that kind of like never ending. You know, back to the same point. Like what I was going to say is the yin and yang is just the never ending battle between good and evil. Like it's almost not supposed to resolve. You know, it's like this never ending kind of back and forth, and that simply being a part of that effort to fight for the right, or you know, what we see as the good, the light is in and of itself the point. You know, and I think that is interesting to think about, you know, but so the pole shift point, you know, that ultimately that would in a very interesting way explain a lot of it, like with an actual scientific event that seems to happen every so many thousands of years or whatever it is. You know, do you know more about that topic in general? I'm not as versed as I should be, and I definitely should look into it more.
It's my favorite topic, Ryan. You know, like so I said, I questioned myself for a while. I was like, is there something wrong with you, Greg, that you lean towards it? But I just end up finding it in all my research. It seems to be the biggest secret of the secret societies. Seems to be that there's this cyclical event. It seems to be one of their traditional purposes is sort of like to manage these events, to manage the herd through them. And they, you know, like I said, they're marked in the Bible. The Bible even mentioned at one point, it gave the year too, where it said the sun shifted by like, it gave the degrees, 15 degrees. I can't remember how many. Interesting stuff. And like I said, like Russia's preparing for more land. They're preparing to come out the other side of this in a very good way. They're investing money in it. Edgar Cayce even predicted that too. He says Russia's going to become like the hope of the future. And the Western Europe and America and North America and America, we are acting differently. We're acting more like we're consolidating and liquidating, like a corporation getting ready for a bit to take a big hit and try to survive that big hit. That's how we're acting. That's not, and a lot of people like, you know, when I talk nicely about Russia, you know, I have no love for any governments. I'm just
right.
I'm just talking about what a lot of people, you know, hate on that, and they're like, oh, Russia's part of the problem too. All right, fine, that's fine. But there isn't there a possibility? It does seem as if the Earth is going to be affected differently in different areas when this thing all comes out.
Well, I think the point is obvious that you weren't going the Russian government. You were simply saying that this location is going to be, you know, it's funny the way that people responded. That's the point we were just making. People are so lost within these kind of, you know, whether it's politics or anything else. And we, you know, missing the forest for the trees clearly in that.
Yeah. But once you think you know what's going on, that's when you really need to be careful.
Yes. You know? What's that old quote, you know, that the biggest problem with the world is that something in fanatics are always so sure of themselves, and why are men so full of doubts? I forget the first part of it, but
I don't know the quote, but that absolutely makes sense. That's exactly it.
Because people that are, you know, more seasoned and intelligent are more ready to make compromise and be like, maybe we don't know for sure, you know, whereas the fanatics are out there going, we know for sure, and that's
dangerous. That's exactly what they want you to think. It's like, and you know, I mean, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I look at things mostly through a lens of what matters to me. And to me, what matters is I believe that I'm here to learn and experience things and to accomplish things and to be challenged and to overcome those challenges. And I believe this is for a spiritual reason. This is for a reason that matters beyond this life that I'm in right now. And so that's kind of like what I'm focused on. And besides that, I'm just trying to, you know, so anything's possible in that lens, you know, anything's possible. Right. This is all an illusion. This is all some type of matrix illusion for our spiritual growth benefit. It's like, okay, I can accept that, but then as far as like the details, all I've really learned is the lies. I haven't found the only truth that I always keep coming to is love. Love is the one universal truth. Everything else you research are just lies. You're like, well, this is a lie, and that's a lie, and this is a lie, and then you can get into why they lie about that. Why they lie about that? You know, and I tend to think that's the biggest trick is to convince you of a lie. It doesn't even matter what the lie is. That's sort of the game, is to reinforce that, because what that does what you're doing when you accept these lies is you're putting your faith in man, which I think is always a mistake. It doesn't matter if it's a man you respect, a man that you love, a man that you admire. They're telling you something, you're accepting it as truth. That's always a very bad thing to do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the problem. Like the problem when it comes to like politics is that people are choosing to have faith or trust or belief in a person. You know, that's kind of what you're getting at there. But back to the pole shift part of it, though. So for those that don't familiar, myself included, like with the, what exactly are we talking about there? And unless you'd like to talk about something else, I find that really interesting.
No, I find it. I'm normally people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it really gets into like with the heliocentric model, it would be, and there's a lot of theories about with the heliocentric model of like the evidence that the magnet, like when they study core samples and they see that the magnetism of the Earth has shifted throughout time. So there's a lot of people have believed that there's a recurrent pole shift going on like that. I don't believe in the heliocentric model. When I don't really know where we are. I do know that by every measure I've been able to apply, the surface that we live on is flat. I see no curvature. I don't know where we live, though. I really don't. But on a flat, motionless plane model, a pole shift could mean all kinds of things. It could mean all kinds of things. There's a theory that I've heard that I lean into because it actually ticks off all the boxes and it makes sense, but it's a little far out there for people that still believe in the heliocentric model. But in the model that I saw, if you can imagine, I like to use the term clock face because it makes sense. If you see, like, we're on a flat clock face surface. The clock is facing up. We're on this clock face. And there's a section of this clock face that has a sun and a moon local within. And this sun and the moon creates this warm, beautiful climate that we're able to, not just us, but billions of life forms are able to, thrive in this little thing. And so if you can imagine, maybe on this clock face, just like the astrological, there's 12 different things on this clock, 12 here. And every couple thousand years when an age shifts, like the Bible talked about, the sun shifted by 15 degrees or whatever, how many degrees, this ecosystem thing shifts. This would explain all the Tartaria stuff, why, maybe because when it shifts and ice melts, that would mean, according to this theory, that it's going to reveal things that haven't been seen for 25,000 years. So whatever was happening in 25,000 years in that location, all of a sudden defrosts and melts. It's going to freeze other areas. So this would explain why certain areas of the world are anticipating growth and others are anticipating the opposite. And this is just the theory that I lean to. But the point being is there's an infinite amount of ways that this could happen, and it appears to have in the past.
What I'm interested in, so two things is the first, describe what we're talking about. Like, so we're talking about a magnetic reversal, right, of the different poles. And so, explain, because that's about the extent.
Well, like I said, with the heliocentric model is a magnetic reversal, and that's still even a bit understood. There is a declassified government document that talks about the pole shift on a heliocentric model.
Well, so let me jump in really quickly because I think this is where my second part was going to be.
Yeah.
So what you're saying there, it sounds like you maybe feel differently if we're talking about a different model. So that's what I was going to ask is, so this, look, I've researched the flat earth conversation, and I might feel differently than you on the outcome of the facts, but I'm interested in how you see this, is that ultimately so that's what, so is it possible to have that? And explain me the difference. So if it's a heliocentric model, that's what I said would make sense. Then is there another version then for the other version?
Well, no, if you're to research pole shift, and you're gonna find pretty much all heliocentric model theories. That's pretty much it.
Okay, interesting.
Most flat earthers, and I don't really consider myself a flat earther, so I shouldn't say that either, because that's derogatory. But most flat earthers will scream when they hear the term pole shift. They'll say that's nonsense because they can't,
Interesting.
but it really could. It doesn't, because the pole simply means the magnetic north. That's what pole, or what is pole? It could mean magnetic north, which doesn't really matter on whether it's heliocentric or flat. Or it could mean, like Edgar Cayce said. All Edgar Cayce said, he didn't call it a pole shift. He just said an event's going to happen and the pole star is going to change. The pole star, what the pole star is today and what it has been for a long time is going to be something different.
And that sounds more like the 15 degrees point you were talking about.
Yeah, that sounds more like the biblical description that when it happened in the past. But according to, core samples, and according to a lot of this is kind of how Joe Rogan got popular. Joe Rogan had Randall Carlson on all the time. And that's really what grew Joe Rogan's audience, or at least that's how I found Joe Rogan, is through the Randall Carlson stuff, which is that's Carlson's thing, is talking about past cataclysms in the past that have changed the face of the earth. And
there's tons of them. Like, I wasn't even aware of how many there are until I interviewed Bibhu Dev Misra. He's an expert on the Yuga cycle, and it's mind blowing how much of it you can prove. Not necessarily like the whys and hows, but like that these events happened, and the timings between them are pretty consistent amongst most people who've researched it. It's very interesting. But
cyclical, they're cyclical, and that would also explain why they would know. Like, if it's cyclical, like we can still predict, a solar eclipse from data that we were given thousands of years ago. That's still accurate today. And so if you were in the know and you knew. This is why I lean towards, the clock. The clock face is just some certain elegant thing to it, because, anyways. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter which model you're on. It's like I said, it's traditionally been explained on the heliocentric model, and it really does. Like, name one strange, unexplainable, weird thing that's been going on in the past 20 years, and apply it to this theory, and it explains it, in my opinion.
Okay. Well,
I haven't found anything that doesn't. And it's happening right now. I think you can, it's not, the climate is changing. A lot of people will argue that's the government doing it to lie. And I don't really believe that. I think they would like you to think that they were doing it, but it is, there is a lot of shifting that's happening now. I think I can feel it. I know a lot of people claim to be able to feel. Some people are calling it space energy or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it's beyond the clown show that we're seeing. There's more to it than that.
Well, so what are we talking about? Like the literal? So we're back to like the so not just a magnetic shift, but logically the actual climate would be different, right? Like, so walk me through what that will look like if that's something that happens or is happening.
Well, according to there's actually several maps that were from several different sources. There's a famous U.S. Navy map that was classified for a while, that's floating around the internet now. There's a famous Edgar Cayce map. There's another guy's name, I can't think of his name. But if you start looking up like future maps, pole shift, you'll find there's several sources, several different, and they're all unrelated, but they're all very similar. That's what's interesting. That's why I mentioned it, because the maps are all very similar. And what they're showing is what I remember really is where I live, because that's what I'm most concerned about. But in America, it showed a massive loss of coastlines, of not just the East Coast and the West Coast, but
and
Gulf of Mexico too,
in a non-gradual way, right? Like, it's going to be something like tidal waves, and that's what I understand.
Yes, it's going to be right in a non-gradual way. In a devastating way.
So then back to the point about like the government reaction to it. So you believe that this in some way is what's driving their action, this mindset?
I think it's that's, if I were to guess, like I said, I don't know. And I choose as a way of operating to keep an open mind. But if you were to put a gun to my head and say, what's going on? I would say that's exactly what's going on. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going on. I think this is why America's talking. This is why we're going after Venezuela now for the oil. Get it now while it's hot. We're going to need it. This is why Greenland is on the Canada. All that stuff is because is consolidation. It's because the American empire is crumbling already. Has been. This event isn't going to help at all, and so they're trying as best as they can. The entities who are obligated to run Murder Incorporated here in America are doing as much as they can to try to survive this. I think, I think that's part of the transhumanism, because there are people that there are people, like Ray Kurzweil. He genuinely, I think, is psychotic. I think these people genuinely are afraid of death to a psychotic level.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is that. Part of it is like, well, shit, maybe we can pull this off, and then maybe we don't have to worry about it. Maybe we can be gods on Earth and stuff like that. The underground bases, which go way back, and many of them are ancient, and then you can go down that rabbit hole. You're going to find underground cities that have existed, that look like they've existed for a long time, and they look like they could have, like the one in Turkey, where thousands of people, I think tens of thousands of people could live in there. The guy found it underneath his house, found a tunnel in his bathroom or something like that.
It's just crazy how much information. I was like just casually looking past something online that was about the miles of basically secret libraries in the Vatican of information, histories, and things that we just imagine the kind of information that's there that we just don't get to see, or the I always like to reference the end of Indiana Jones, where they're like carting the boxes into the endless, full of top secret boxes that are full of things, at the end of Crusades, where they
put
the box away, and it's just how many things are we being hidden from? How many inventions, as John Rappaport covers, have they been stifling? Because it's amazing to think about what the world could be like if we weren't being controlled by sociopaths.
Yeah, and a lot of it's happened recently. Like I can't accept history at all anymore. I used to, I was very my personality was heavily formed as a young child on the idea of freedom, the idea of like the First and Second Amendment, natural rights, inalienable rights, stuff like that really got me fired up at a young age, and really kind of formed a big part of my personality. But I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe, once I started like looking at the baby farms in the 1800s, in the mid 1800s, so much weird shit happened that doesn't make sense. It just left me being like, I don't know what's going on. For all I know, the whole thing is it's all just a big shoe.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's and I'm sure you would agree, not at the same time, not dismissing anything either, right? But just questioning it all, right? That's just such a basic point of logic, just to go, okay, I'll consider this point, but we should question it, right? No matter how foundational it feels, basic things, because we've gone through so many points of manipulation, so many obvious realities that are breaking down in front of us right now. We should absolutely be questioning these things to their core, and I think that's just something that's been driven out of us, like as a species almost, in so many different ways.
The biggest tragedy is going to be, like, whether it was true or not, whatever the motives were, the fact is that the American people were given and I'm no government lover. I'm probably closer to an anarchist than anything else, but still, the American people were given a constitutional government that was based on the idea that God gives us our rights, and that government can't give us our rights. They call it inalienable or unalienable, or natural. And that's to me is extraordinary. They didn't have to do that. They didn't. These powdered wig fairies that everyone idolizes for being the founding fathers. They didn't have to do that. Oh, maybe they're good people. I shouldn't make fun of them. But
I question it too, man. I question it too.
So. And I find that very interesting. And what's going to be really tragic is if we lose that, which is, I think, coming fast, because that's something to really, I think, be ashamed of. I think, because it's not just as an American, I see that, and I love that, because anti-government and all that stuff. But I think most people in the world that are on our level and interested in these things also are looking towards America. I remember back before COVID, like 2019, that was the vibe. The vibe was the world was cheering for America to beat the empire, so that the whole world could follow along. 1776 worldwide, which was a very popular chant at InfoWars. Right. And I was a fan of the show since 2004, and I love that. It's elegant. It's very, to me, it's very beautiful. It's basically saying, you know, from a simple person who just said, like, as a child, I fell in love with the idea. I just love the idea that we were given, well, the responsibility basically to overthrow a tyrannical government, you know, and it was all set up for that. That's super badass. And so the idea of wanting to see that go worldwide, it was, you know, why not?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you on the sentiment, but the problem though is, especially coming from somebody that I don't feel is genuine, like the
well, not anymore, for sure. It's become one of the most shameful things in all of American history. I mean, the guy who used to paint himself as the new Paul Revere is the new Benedict Arnold. It's an absolute tragedy.
You mean you're referring to Alex Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you entirely, but I'm saying in a general sense, using that as the point that, like, you know, because I agree, that was it's not, I don't think that's genuine coming from that platform, but the point was that whoever's doing it, 1776, you know, worldwide, the point was that, and again, actually, first point about the founding fathers, it's right to question this stuff, right? We don't know, there were people in that room that didn't want what ultimately ended up. You can prove
that's
that, right? So it battles out, right? So you could argue that we either won out with the idea of the republic and ultimately lost that very quickly, which you can also prove, or it never really happened the way we thought it did. Either way, the ideas, if forced, by the way, to live in a state of society, I'd like to find one without a government, but we're a little not there yet. But if we're forced to live with this, I think the Constitution and what, you know, it is one of the most important steps in the direction of trying to live within a government and somehow check its power, right? Either way, the point is that was the time for that, right? The idea at this point going forward, the idea was not that, as you highlighted, inherent, right? Not the government can't give or take. It is something that exists the world around, but we within these borders can, you know, enforce that idea. Hopefully others will follow suit, right? And so the idea from here, now we have people claiming that, you know, only Americans have constitutional rights, and they completely have lost the plot about what this thing was about. But so I'm of the mind, though, that it's something that was always going that way. And today it's like it's the insulting use of the original model to try to force you into the exact opposite, to make it as simple as possible. And that's so depressing. But I share your desire, like the idea of trying to show people a path of which they can have inherent rights that no one can take away. Yes, I'm all for that. But this is more like control everything, you know. that's the way it kind of feels like they're fighting for it. But so I just want to put that point over it all, because it's so frustrating to see. But I agree with your sentiment.
Well, what it is now, I mean, I was there for 3 years before I worked remotely when I did work there. And I think I can fairly say that overwhelmingly the majority of the people that work there and the majority of the audience are decent people that want tell the government to go fuck themselves. You know, I mean, that's basically the gist. I mean, this is a whole other subject to get into, but for and I don't know, I just have anecdotal experiences, but the way it appeared to me, and Alex actually made a confession of this. He went on live and he seemed very genuine to me. He was like having a nervous breakdown practically. And he said his family's been in the deep state for generations. And there's a good deep state fighting a bad deep state, and he's working for the good deep state. And I think that's probably the most genuine thing he ever said. And I don't think he ever really got there until recently. I think it was the Sandy Hook. I think he's MK Ultra'd. I think he is half retarded, like he likes to joke he is. I mean, anyone who's met him knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. He's like, people like to use the word autistic or whatever. I think he's MK Ultra. And I think he's been raised up in that and really figured out his role, which is, you know, like I said, it's super tragic because there's a lot of people that follow that show that have, you know, unfortunately put their faith in man. And now they're being let off a cliff. And a lot of them are religious fanatics, so you can't really blame Alex for all that. A lot of these people, like, you know, the Christian Zionists that support Israel, the reason they support Israel is because they want Israel to be destroyed. That's why, because it's the prophecy. It's part of, they want 2/3 of the Jews to be murdered because that's the only way Jesus is going to ever love them.
It's such an interesting overlap. I brought this up so many times that we're, you know, so you've got the Jewish Zionists who believe the opposite, right? The West has to be collapsed, you know, so it's like this weird, like, but yet they're willing to, I guess, like work in the same direction as far. It's just such a weird, you know, but it's all sociopathic. Like it's all just such a political manipulation.
Put it lightly.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, and you know, that's an important insight. You know, I think I I try to call out people in this field that I think are being dishonest in general, but the bigger point is about anybody doing that, right? That are trying to right now sort of use like the point about immigration, right? Like saying that or just even the bigger point, we have to destroy the Constitution in ways to help fight to put back in place, like these kind of broken logic, people violating people's constitutional rights in order to stop a problem, because stopping that problem will bring us back to where we can do it.
It's crazy.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's Republican again. Now, like, it's like the one thing that's really, really heartbreaking to see, frustrating to see, is that the two-party system is more alive than it's ever been now. Like there was,
right.
I remember growing up always being really embarrassed by the adults around me every 4 years, because it just seemed so stupid and retarded. But I still over time kind of saw more people like maybe getting on, I don't know, but it's shocking though what Trump was able to do to bring it back, because now there's like a whole reinvigorated group of Republicans, ready to start wars and steal oil in the name of, my country, right or wrong.
Right.
And then and I remember, as much as it looked like the Democrat Party was destroyed, it's not. 2028 is going to be Democrat all the way.
I mean, I still have the mind that it's all part of the same thing. It's like, it's just,
it is. Of course it is.
Power structure just never really stops.
Yeah, it's a psychological operation. It's brilliant. I mean, that's why there's two. If there was more than two, it wouldn't be as effective. But the duality nature of human psychology, of our preferences constantly, our mind constantly. I like that. I don't like that. I like that. I don't like that. It's worked. It's weaponized against us. Absolutely, 100%. I mean, we've been slaves to the crown, as far as I can tell, forever. There was a time in history where allegedly we had independence from them, but even if you go by that historical record, it only lasted about a decade before we became indebted to the crown again. So this is a strong arm of the crown used as a proxy as a blunt object to beat the shit out of people in the world.
And so are you meaning the power structure or like the British crown?
I mean the British crown, and I don't even know what the British crown is. Like, the British crown is a bit mysterious when you get into that. The British crown owns 80% of all real estate on the planet, something like that. Last I checked. It's
an important point. Matt Ehret makes this point all the time. That like it gets far. It doesn't get enough attention. How much
the British crown gets away with murder. No one ever calls them out, and they're still. You could say the Vatican, the crown. That's pretty much the height of power. A lot of people like to say Israel. Israel is there to be destroyed. Israel is there to accomplish a mission by using religious psychopath fanatics. And I don't exactly know what that mission is, but we're going to see it probably in our lifetime. But if it were not for the Vatican or for the crown, there would be no Israel.
Right.
But only what Israel was made possible was through them.
I agree. Here's what's interesting, though, and at least a consideration is that anybody paying, even remotely looking into this knows of the Balfour Declaration, understands, the Rockefeller through the UK basically gave them this land, right? And so the point is that you could argue that was the mindset to begin with. And who knows, maybe you're right to this very point. But it's also worth considering that was the idea when it was originally given, and that they have wildly lost control of it. You know what I mean? At this point now, it's very clear that Israel in its own way, or just let's just say Zionism, has worked its way into these. Like it's certainly just as likely that over all this time, Israel, through all the same things we're seeing in the U.S., has arguably taken control, or at least influences aggressively, the UK and the United States. So it's like it's interesting. It could be the other way around. People do argue that.
Possible, but I it's possible. I just don't. The reason I don't see that is because it's off the rails. It always has been off the rails. If you track Israel back to 1666 and that whole thing, I mean, it was off the rails back then. It's off the rails now. It's like I think Bill Cooper was correct. Bill Cooper said the purpose of Israel is to bring about this end times prophecy nonsense story, and then use it as an excuse to create a one world religion, which, by the way, the Vatican's already prepared to do. Like they've years ago announced their plans for the one world religion church that will be in Jerusalem, where these three Abrahamic religions that were all created by the same secret societies are now waging war against each other. And that's why everyone is seeing it now. We're supposed to be, I mean, according to this theory, they want us to see it. They want us all to hate it. They want us all to want to see the end of all these religions. And we're there.
Well, when you said, I think you said 1666. Is that the date you said?
Yeah, and I'm referring to the Sabbatean.
Okay, that's what I was just making sure I understood. Yeah, that's interesting. I interviewed David Icke about that overlap, well, in part anyway. The Sabbateanism kind of overlap to a lot of this. It goes back such a long time, and it's so interesting to see. But that's why it's so interesting today to see, the 77-year-old Zionist project, and like wondering where that really connects back with these bigger pictures. And so that's, that's one of the reasons why when we talk about, like, is it the US or is it Israel? Well, to your point, maybe it's neither. Maybe it's a much bigger apparatus that it's behind a lot of this stuff.
I would say, yeah, I mean, because like they're not. That's my experience, and this is where a lot of people, I think, miss it. Is that a lot of people think that these people are dumb, and they're stupid, and they're idiots.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's like a lot of these people are walking around as if all their ancestors are just the dumbest idiots in the world. And that I see the exact opposite. I think these people are extremely clever. I've never been able to predict. I have hindsight many times after the fact. Like, as soon as it happens, I'll be like, oh, I see it. I see what you were doing there, but I would say they're definitely smart enough to know that they don't want you to know who they are. So if you know who they are, if the whole world's looking at Israel, the whole world's looking at the United States.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the United States and Israel. That's
a good way to put it. That's at least for consideration, for sure. Well, and the clear, I comparing like the Congress, for example. I make this point all the time, is that the average person looks at Congress and thinks the people in power. I don't. I think they're all a bunch of people
they're actors
who don't really, whether actors or people, like, I think they think they're in power. I think that many of them are placated, even to the point of the presidency. I think that the people go, here are your two choices, Mr. President.
They're retarded actors then. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But the point is that you look at a lot of these people in Congress, and they really aren't that bright. I mean, look at half of Trump's cabinet. If not the majority of them, these people are not. These are the junior team guys. They're not the best. These people are really bad at lying. They don't know how to handle themselves. And so it's like, clearly that shows me that something else is the real string puller there, whatever you want to think that is. And so that's kind of your point, is that the average person looks at that and thinks that that's what we're referring to. No, you were talking about something much, much larger that you don't see, you can't define, and that's what's so hard for the average person to, put their hands around it. It's nothing you can do with that.
I think it goes back to the yin yang. I think it is dark and light, and I think it is it's a never-ending battle, a war. It's Valhalla. That's another way of putting it. And they'll never. That's probably what powers this strange realm that we're in. It's probably a good reason, I believe. I do believe in a creator. I do choose. I know. Since I was a kid, I've had a personal relationship. Where I've experienced what I would call miracles over and over and over again. So, but that's a personal thing for me. So, but that's just where I am.
Yeah.
And so I choose to believe that I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a good reason. And I'm just trying to do my best to get out of it. I'm starting to realize, I'm starting to question the idea of fighting in this battle. For example, and I haven't necessarily even fought that much in it. I research, I make videos of pointing out things that I think are important to know to survive in this realm and to navigate in this realm. And I have at times fought, but I'm really starting to question that entirely. I think it's for me personally, I'm finding it's much more beneficial for me to really focus on the beautiful, to focus on the good, and to look for opportunities where they may come up, where I can maybe help my fellow man in some way. And there's always an opportunity to help yourself. That might sound selfish, but maybe or not necessarily you, Ryan, but maybe someone listening has mastered themselves completely, where there's nothing else you could do to improve on yourself. I haven't. Mm-hmm. And that is the one power that I have. I don't have power over you. I don't have power over anyone. I do have power over myself. And the more I can do the right thing, the more I can be right and righteous and kind, that will, through the monkey see, monkey do effect, that will have an effect on the people around me. And I also think deeper than that, it will too. So yeah. I don't know what got me on that whole rant, but
no, I think it's a good place to kind of wrap it up too. I think that's exactly all we can do is you got to follow your heart. You got to follow what you believe in. You got to stick with your principles, your integrity, and it's like, that's, you got, personally, I definitely hope you continue to make videos and content and fight, because my mindset is always that, I just, as a person, even if I knew that this was fruitless, that I wouldn't succeed, whatever I think that looks like today, I'd probably still be fighting anyway, because it's just who I am, you know, but we each have our own battle through all this, you know, and it's like, but I hope that you continue to put stuff out there, whatever you do. I really appreciate your work, and, you know, just your insightful, you know, just kind of genuine, you know, presence. You know, it's just unique out here. You know, you are a very real person, and I enjoy talking with you about this stuff, because it's clear that you care about this stuff, man. And you know, and plenty of opinions that I'm sure people might disagree with, but nonetheless, it's a journey that we're all on, you know. So I look forward to again with you, brother. We should talk again on some deeper topics, especially the pole shift thing is crazy. I mean, it's so hard to take time, you know, with like, we're like watching a genocide play out, you know, and like this AI panopticon built around us. And it's like these things. That's why I'm glad that you're doing the work you are around it, because it deserves time, you know? So thank you for that.
I should do more reports on the subject. Actually, I want to, and I know like my Substack wants me to as well too. But I think it's like, the thing about the pole shift story is a lot of people think that's like the ultimate doom thing. It's really not. It's like, I mean, I think you know what I'm talking about, because you're talking about the Yugas. Just the fact that we're alive right now throughout this extraordinarily rare time in history, you know, it may be cyclical. It may have happened several times before, but still, there's really nothing quite like it. There's nothing in recorded history, I think, of what we're going through right now. So that alone is enough for people, I think, to be, you know, grateful that you're alive, and make the most out of this life, and be the best, you know, spirit in a human body that you can possibly be.
Hear, hear. Appreciate you, brother. And I'm gonna anything else you want to shout on the way out? Upcoming events or work is coming out soon. I'll include the links to your accounts and your Substack and everything for people to check.
No, that's it. Substack and Twitter. I want to check out these. I think you've been going to these Anarchapulco things. If I remember,
no, I've actually never been.
Oh, you haven't? I thought I heard you talking about it recently.
Derek goes, or he had in the past. Yeah, it's I like anything like that where people can get together and share ideas, you know. So
yeah. We need to have more of that moving forward in the future. We need to get more off of the internet and more back into real life, for sure.
Yes, I agree with that. Well, good note to end on. And as always, everybody out there, question everything, come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.